everyone, welcome to the Edge Power Sports, hosting another great night with the dirt bike community. We're going to go over a couple little tips and tricks, answer hopefully a whole bunch of questions from all of you in the community. So feel free to chime in, ask any question you want, even if it's not exactly on the topic we're working on as we sit. Definitely hit up any question that you have coming to mind, and hopefully we can help you clear out some of those gray areas and make it a little easier in your motorcycle adventures out there. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about changing a flat tire on, or actually a tube on the side of the trail. So we're basically just going to kind of do a light simulation on things went sad, you have to turn the bike on its side, pull the rear tire out and install a new tube in it. So basically we've got a nice little demo here. One of our kind clients, Dave Barton, was kind enough to loan us his machine and let me fiddle on it a little bit, and I'll treat it with some kid gloves for him, but hopefully you'll get a good example on what's going to happen here and how to make it a little easier process for you. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay the bike down on the axle side with the nut facing up. If you have a motorcycle that's got a carburetor, you're going to want to shut the fuel off so you don't dump fuel all over the place. Pretty much any fuel injected motorcycle, you're not going to have to worry about any major loss of fluids, so you should be okay. So got the handy little backpack here. I think we kind of talked about it in our last little episode. Just going to dig out some of our spanner wrenches and our axle wrenches. So fortunately on this one, got a nice little kit we can set up on it. One thing you may want to discover, and I'm actually going to pop this back up again, just so you can see the advantage of some mechanical advantage versus starting out with the bike on the ground. So have your wrench set up, just give it a good boot like that, and you can use that force of the bike being on the ground. That way it's going to help you out in that process versus trying to kick it off to the side. Luckily we're going to have our motocross boots on. It's my work day today, so I've just got my shop boots on. So once you've got that broke loose, nut's going to come off, and I would recommend placing your hardware maybe somewhere close to your backpack so where you're not going to lose those goodies. Then where you're going to get a little advantage is while the bike is still sitting straight up and down, give that axle a little boot, get it started, get it kind of kicked out on this side. You can start working that out a little bit. But where a lot of people struggle is if they're in a spot where they can't get their bike on the other side. This is going to help you pull the axles out. So now that we've got the axle nut off, axle's already started, then we can start getting that axle worked out. Just like so. Don't worry about your chain tensioners. You can leave them right where they need to be. Push the bike wheel forward a little bit. Get your chain off. And you can work that tire right out. Okay, so one thing that you might gain the advantage of is if you do blow a tire or a tube out on the trail and you've ridden on it a little bit, a lot of times it'll de-bead that tire. So one side or the other will come off to where it'll make it a little more advantageous for you to actually muscle that tire around. So right now we're okay. So I'm just gonna actually grab a core tool and remove the valve stem on it just so it deflates. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, so valve core, some bikes actually have metal valve core stem covers on them, so you can use those to your advantage. That's actually just a little valve core tool right there. So pop the valve core out on this one. Normally if the tire's already deflated, you're not gonna do this. Then we're just gonna grab our tools. Most of your valve core stems are 12 millimeter. We're just gonna pull that nut off of there. And if your tube actually strips out and yanks the valve stem right out and it's just spinning, that's no big deal. Then you can just start right off the bat on removing that tire. Some people don't put nuts on the outside of the rim on their valve stem. I'll show you the reason why I would recommend doing that. Just makes it a little easier on the reassembly process. So we're gonna pull our rim lock out now. Now, since we're not taking the tire completely off, we can actually just get away with taking a few of the threads almost all the way off the rim lock. And then once you've got about maybe 3 threads hanging on the rim lock, then you can actually just lean the tire up, press down on that rim lock. That way it's gonna take it away from the bead and you're not gonna be locked in. Okay, here's the fun part. Now, you need to find your stump or a rock, something that you can actually press down and get that bead broken, okay? Let's see if we maybe get a little lucky on this one. We're just gonna get that started. One thing you might find to your advantage, I know everyone's packing water in their bikes. A little bit of lubricant around that tire, that way it's gonna help your tire irons get stuffed into that wheel a little easier. So once we're in there, we're just gonna keep working more spoons in there. And if it won't break loose here, then you can grab a stump or a rock or something like that to help you out. So we're just gonna work it around, keep getting that bead to break. And like I said, most times if you get a flat tire, one of your beads is already gonna break anyway, so you shouldn't have to go through this process, but we're just gonna run you through it. So once you've got that first bead broken, and you're just gonna take your tire iron in here. I would recommend about maybe 2 or 3 in there. 3 is usually a little easier. And we're just gonna work that bead all the way off. Little bites help. Go. Just like that. Sometimes they can be a little bit of a bear. I would recommend, if you're on the trail, pull some of your gear off. That way you're not going to build up a big old sweat and wear yourself out. There we go. And if you've got friends, that helps out too. So once you've got a good bite into it, then it'll start getting a little easier for you. And usually with our moto boots on, we can kick and scream at it a few times. There we go. And once you got that going, then it gets a little easier. One thing to be mindful of, your brake rotor is really sharp, so wear your gloves while you're doing this process. And if you're lucky, it was the brake rotor side that came unbeaded on you. It's usually the sprocket side's a little gnarlier. might struggle a little bit where the rim lock is, but that's okay. Just kind of give it a little more manipulation and it'll finally come out. All right, we have an open tire now. Okay, so rim, actually we're gonna start with our valve stem. We're gonna get that poked through. Then you're just gonna sneak that tire right out from underneath the bead. Now, a lot of times if I'm in a moment like this, I'll actually pull my rim lock out and just leave it out and take care of it when I get back home. So, tube's out. Now, I know this tube is good, so I'm not going to put a new one in, but if you need to, your new tube, you can either use just some dust off the trail, make sure there's not a whole bunch of grit in it, or just use your bottled water as lubricant, and that'll help slide that back in there. So that's actually what we're going to do with this one. Some people use baby powder, just depends on the moment. In a pinch, I'm gonna take a bottle of water. Okay, so here's why we want to use our nuts on our valve stem core. So the reason you use these is that actually helps lock that valve stem back into the wheel so you don't have those issues on it, okay? So that's gonna give you a big advantage right there. So basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna find where your valve stem is, come off to the right or the left of where that valve stem hole is. You want to get a good bite, maybe 2 wrenches in here, 2 spanner wrenches, just so you can get that bead worked down enough so you can get that valve stem snuck in there. So now we've got that. Maybe you got a buddy that's helping you out with his boot. Going to get that stuck in the valve stem. If you can see right here, you can actually see where that valve stem hole is right there. Get a little more tweak on that tire just so you can get it down some. And nice thing is you're out on the trail, so it's not like you're pressed for time or anything. You don't have to beat yourself up. Okay, so once you've got your valve stem poked through the rim, then you're going to use your second nut and just only put it on about maybe 3 or 4 threads. You don't want to bury it all the way down to the rim.
Rob, we had a question. Can you just use slime?
You can use slime, but what if you tear your rim or your tire? You got a hole about that big. Okay. In fact, actually, we ran into an issue with that today. One of our clients brought his tire in. He threw 2 big bottles of slime in his tire, and then we actually pulled his tire apart. He had a gash in his tire about that big. Slime wouldn't have done anything for it. So it works good in some occasions, but not every occasion out there. So now that we've got our, good question, awesome question. So now that we've got our rim started, we put that nut on there, just a couple threads, probably about 3 to 4 threads is all you need just to keep it held in there. Then all we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the tire back over the tube. Here's where a little bit of lubrication helps with water. So once you've got it started over, then you can start working that tube back into the tire.
So hopefully you're up the mountain, you have some water.
Yep, exactly. Well, if you're up in the mountains, hopefully you've got your camel bag with you or something where you're keeping some fluid. So even if you don't have a bottle of water, you've got some sort of lubricant in there. So you've got something to work with. If not, hopefully you're next to a stream or something like that, snow, that type of thing. Good deal. Okay, so now that we've got that started, notice how our valve stem is poking out slightly. One thing you want to be mindful of is push that into the threads, because sometimes that tube can get caught up underneath the bead, and then when you remount it, that bead of the tube is stuck right on this edge, and that's where you end up pinching your tire again. So then basically just start back over again. All right.
The wrench that you use to open up the tire, what's that called?
Excuse me, this is just a tire spanner wrench. This is actually one of the factory wrenches that come in the Husqvarna toolkits and the KTM toolkits. So, yeah, you can get pretty universal setups. I know there's a lot of sites. We've got a bunch over on our parts department where you can find all sorts of different universal setups. If you happen to own a Husqvarna, a KTM, or a gas, we actually sell these amazing trackside toolkits. Basically, it's like a small little briefcase. You could strip the entire bike down with that and do
I thought the leverage was it takes quite a bit of leverage. Is there something that...
It does. There are some manufacturers out there. I'd have to talk to our parts manager to see if we have some, but there are some tire irons that actually extend out a little bit to where you can get a little more advantage to it. I actually, in one of my other kits, I actually have a sleeve tube that I run over one of my tire irons. That way I've just got a little more mechanical advantage to it too. So there's all sorts of little levers and stuff that you can use to your advantage on it.
You guys have them here.
Yep, we've got some great, one of my favorite ones is actually a little larger. I don't pack that with me, but it's actually got kind of a spooned edge to it to where you can sneak up underneath a little bit. If your tube's stuck in your tire, you can actually kind of work that and kind of spoon it out too. So sometimes if you haven't maintained your tire for quite a while, your tube will actually stick to your tire or your rim, and that just makes it a nightmare to pull it off. So that's one of the reasons I really recommend playing with your bike a little bit. Get cozy with it. Pull things apart, put them back together, and that way it's going to come apart easier if you have to in those situations. If you replace a tire, replace the tube, because that tube actually rubs inside the carcass and it actually thins the wall out. So there's no real advantage of trying to save money on 15 bucks on a tube, where you could gain a lot of advantage on not getting a flat out on the trail too. So.
Now I'm speaking because I'm a customer.
Mm-hmm.
So, for those that are here in Utah, if they come here to Edge, are there any kind of discount that maybe we mentioned that we're part of the Edge Motorsport community?
I'm sure we could work something out. That I'll definitely talk to our parts manager and our general manager on that and get you set up on that. So should be a 10% discount on it and get you set up on that. So, and we love to help you out. We're all, the first part of our company is E and Edge. That's educate. We want to keep you educated and keep you safe out on your adventures out there. So if you have any questions, I'll hit us up on it. We can definitely help you out. Awesome, good deal. Well, so now that we're here, so we've got basically the tubes all stuffed in. Really be mindful of getting that tube stuffed all the way up underneath the rim edge so you don't catch it. Here's where we have to be a little sneaky. You don't want to just drive your tire in there and just go crazy at it. You have to kind of sneak that in there, because if you just go bonkers and try stuffing that tire in there, there's a good chance that you could pinch your tube. So here's where we're going to take little teeny, almost half bites on it. So I usually set up about three spoons in there.
Interrupt you again.
No, you're good.
As you know, I'm non-mechanical, but I like to ride bike. But I noticed, in the, what is it called again? That leverage.
So basically, these are tire spoons or tire irons.
Spoons. I noticed you flip the different sides that you use them to pick them out. You use a certain.
Yeah. So if we actually look kind of close, one is curved, so that's going to actually hook around the rim edge when you stuff it in the tire, and it's going to give you a little more of a bite versus that straight edge right there. These come in Vantage too, but I typically use more of that curved edge just so you can get up underneath there and get a good bite at it. So, and you're going to...
And that side turns towards the, not the rim, but towards the
actually towards the rim. So if this were the wheel, you'd be hooking down underneath it like that. So that way you can gain that mechanical advantage. It's not just going to...
That's for putting the tire back on.
Yep,
take the tire back.
For taking it off too. Yep, and for taking it off. So when you're taking it off, you're actually going around the tire versus the rim. So you just spin it over 180 and you're good. So now that we're kind of in this position, I usually like to get 3 tire irons in there, because if you only start with 2, when you try to get that third one in, it's almost impossible because that gap really tightens up. So if you run with 3, that's going to give you a good advantage there. So notice how I don't continue to bend all the way down. The reason I don't do that is because your tube is hanging out there somewhere in an area that we're not sure where it's at. So that's why I say don't just go right down crazy with it, because then you can pinch your tube again. So we're only going to take kind of a half bite right there. I usually just kind of, if I can, hold it with my knee. Then we're just going to do another little half bite like that. And then you'll notice how it starts getting a little tighter. So you might need to shorten up that distance between your tire irons. If you've got a buddy, they can stand on the other side of the tire. And there we start to get rocking there, okay? All right, now, pull this out. Now, before we get too crazy, I'm actually going to kind of back that out because I want to talk about your rim lock. Your rim lock is actually where you want to start at, because if you get everything all laced around, then you won't be able to get your rim lock back in. So ideally, you want to get your rim lock, and you're going to basically set it up just like you did on your valve stem. Put a couple little threads on it, so it's not going to suck back into the wheel, but you do want that extra leeway so you can push that rim lock back a little bit and let your tire pop up underneath the rim lock and the rim of the tire as well, okay? So now that we've got that set up, we're actually gonna just start with the rim lock area. Get our spoon set up, and you're just gonna be on one side or the other of the rim lock. Like I said, just take your time. You're not in a race, unless you are in a Erzberg race or something like that. You might have to hustle a little bit. So now that we've got that dialed, we're gonna start closest to the rim lock. One more close to the rim lock. Now we can start seeing that bead, and we're just pushing that rim lock in a bit to where it passes up on the tire and it just pops past it. So now we're set there, we're in pretty good shape. Yep, it's already catching on the rim lock. It's already on the proper side. If it looks like it's getting a little dry, it's okay to add a little water to it. Just make your life a little easier. Then I'm gonna take the middle spoon out and just keep working it. Now we're there, we've got our knee right here. We can kind of leave this one right here. Be mindful of your valve stem, because sometimes it likes to sneak up underneath that in between the rim and the tire. So give that a little press every once in a while. And we're just gonna pull our spoon back out. Keep working it, just like so. Might have to take a closer bite to your spoon that you're working with, just so it's not too much stress. Remember, be mindful of your brake rotor. It can get razor sharp. A little half bite so we're not catching the tube. And if you can, get this side of the tire sucked down a little bit. That way it's going to allow more of that body to work over the rim edge on that side. And this is totally common, just starts getting a little tighter, so sometimes I'll back this spoon off a little bit just so I can get the other one in. Sometimes it feels like you're going 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, but it'll get there eventually. If you find that you're having a better advantage with one more than the other, it's okay to swap out. Use this one as kind of your stabilization spoon, kind of get that in there. Then you can use your handier one to get in there and get a little better bite. so. I'm gonna sneak that over. I'm just gonna keep the tube held down, the tire. And it's usually these last bites that get pretty tough because it's just getting really tight up against the rim edge. Getting pretty close here, so I think we can just get a good bite out of it. All right, so if we look really close here, we can see where that tube's trying to sneak in between the tire and the rim. So we want to avoid that. Usually just give a little pull up and kind of work that out. Just like so. All right, all our tools are out, our valve stem's pressed back in, so we've got full advantage there. Now we're gonna fill this rascal up.
Now, Rob, I noticed you put your knee, just for the levers. What about, do you have to be concerned about warping the wheels or anything like that?
No, you know, your dirt biker wheels are pretty durable. I mean, it's especially most of us, I mean, even if we're 200 pounds, if we're leaning on the wheel's designed to take those kind of impacts. I mean, we're coming off 15, 20-foot jumps and hard landings, so they can definitely take a lot more abuse. And the one advantage that we're doing this for is just so we can use the weight for mechanical advantage. Plus, we can get that bead sucked into this little deeper spot on the wheel. And that way, when you're trying to pry all this stuff, you've got a little extra leeway, a little more real estate to kind of push everything over. So that's why we really want to do that. That's where usually people struggle, is they're not getting the opposite side pushed down when they're trying to bead or take off. So
I believe you may have had another training that, how to pack your tools and things like that. What are some of the minimal essential? I know, and what you use there, you have two spoons, and you use another one there.
Yeah.
So what are the essentials, the minimum things that get the
minimums? Awesome, good question. So, this is more my extreme of what I'd pack if I were going on a really, really long ride and I knew I wasn't going to be that close to my vehicle, that type of thing. I'm not going to lie, I hate changing tubes on the side of the trail. My biggest trick is even if I blow a tire, I've got, where'd I put my tool case? So I've got a whole bunch of zip ties. These are some of my smaller ones here, but inside my pack here, these are my biggies here. These will actually wrap around the back end of a dirt tire, okay? So they'll actually go around the rear wheel. So that way I know I've got enough for the front because it's a lot smaller, but usually 8 to 10 good zip ties, and I try to get the heavier dutier ones, and that way it'll milk you off the trail if you're in a pinch. I've had to do it, it works really well. So that way you're not having to do this number. I mean, if you have to, you have to, and then you have the knowledge how to do it. I would recommend practicing this too. It's not not a fun endeavor, but at least you get some knowledge on how to do it. You get comfortable with moving your bike around, and okay, I've got to lay it on this side, and I've got to twist the bike around this way, use a little bit of mechanical advantage. And you will find some things that you're going to end up putting in your toolkit. Like I've got my spoons here. This is a great one for that axle there. My particular personal bike, I don't need this wrench here. I've actually got all my other tools in here for my bike. I ride a kind of a multi-purpose DRZ 400 SM that I supermoto race, and I put dirt tires on it, and I go do a ton of single track riding too. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for me. So just depends on really your bike and the make and model on what's going to give you this best advantage on your toolkit. So light makes right, grams make pounds. So if you can keep everything as trim as possible, it's less fatiguing out on the trail. You're not feeling like you're packing a ton of stuff out there too. So once we're kind of at this point, then we're going to put some air in this little rascal. So I've just basically just got a little nitrogen kit here. You can find these at I bought mine here at the Edge Power Sports, so you can get great kits. This one actually comes with some tire seals. So if you got a puncture seal, like maybe you're riding an ATV or something like that where you don't have tubes, you've got those for your advantage. Basically, ream the hole out, stick a new plug in, and then you can fill it up with air from that point. But those are typically on a tire that doesn't have tubes. If you've got tube tires, then you'll probably either want to.
Can you show that air thing again?
This little guy here?
How many fill can you?
This one, with this tire, you're probably going to end up using about 2 cartridges in it just to get it filled up. Yeah, because these go up to about 6 to 8 pounds. So they're kind of set up for like an average four-wheeler tire. You're going to be looking at about 7 to 8 pounds on pressure on an average four-wheeler. So one of these will take care of one tire on a four-wheeler. So you're probably going to need about two per tire.
Okay, so if you're in a pinch, I guess at least one would take you.
Yeah, it'll milk you out. Yeah, it'll give enough body to the tire to where you can get yourself at least home back to the vehicle, get yourself a little safer on that. So but usually I even my kit, I pack 3 in mine just in case. So I've got the advantage on there, and then you're good to go. So on these little guys, basically, you've got a little adapter, and a lot of these adapters that screw onto your valve core, they don't have a trigger pull or anything like that. So you actually have to attach this to your valve core. That's why you want to put the nut on your valve core stem. That way you can get that turned out to a decent distance. Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, you never want to run a valve stem nut on your valve stem, because if you spin your tire, it'll rip your valve core out or your valve stem out, and then you've got a big giant hole in your tube. There is a slight trick to that you can do. Not saying that it will completely prevent it from happening. If your tire's slipping on your wheel, it's slipping on your wheel. Maybe your rim lock's not biting as well as it should. But once we get this filled up, I'll show you the little hack to that. So we're just going to take this all the way in. We don't have to crank it down to where we're trying to torque anything. We're just trying to bring that tube all the way up to the rim edge. All right, so once we're at that point, basically we're going to take our little adapter, we're going to screw that onto our valve stem. So once that's on there, then we're just going to take our little CO2 cartridge. And we should plug right up to it. And no guarantees you'll get a full bead, but at least you'll get a body out of it. Ideally, you want to get a full bead out of there, so we're going to shoot for 2 on it. now we've got that. Got a little bit of body on there. I'm gonna save the third one just in case I need it for down the trail. So once we've got that set, here's where you might struggle a little bit, is getting that brake caliper lined back up with your brake pads. So we're just gonna kind of wiggle it in there. Might take a little finagling. Most times those brake pads like to fall down on you. So in that case, grab your tire iron spoon. We're gonna spread the brake pads a little bit. And you can even leave that tire spoon in there for a second just to get that rotor started. Make sure your spacers are good. All right, so now that we got the wheel set, just gonna put the chain on. Now, like I mentioned, you don't have to worry about your chain adjusters because those are all locked in. You're not readjusting your chain right now. You're just getting yourself back on the trail. So now you've got that. I'm gonna get our axle placed back in. Sometimes it's kind of a blind shot getting it there. And if you have to stand the bike up, that's okay too. Hopefully you've got buddies with you and they can help you out.
So this you having the bike laid down like this, is it because of an assumption that you don't have anybody to help you?
Sometimes.
That you don't have anything to lean on, right?
Exactly. Or a lot of it too is just the mechanical advantage of being able to get that axle out. Because if your bike is standing straight up and down, you're not going to be able to get the axle out as easy. And then once you pull that tire out, then the whole bike's just going to want to collapse. So sometimes we just have to lay the bike on its natural resting position and kind of do our job on it and then get back underway. So good question. So once we've kind of got it started in there, it might take a little finagling. But this is also going to segue into what we're going to talk about next after I get this rascal on here. All right, so I'm just going to stand the bike up because I really can't see what's happening on it right now on that side. And here's where, if you've got a side stand, that sometimes helps out too, because then you can get the bike lifted up a little bit, get a little pressure off it, then you can get that axle in there. All right, so now we've got that on. And we can clean up our mess and we're back on the trail again. So hopefully that kind of gives you some ideas on things you have to do on just getting that tire replaced and getting yourself back on the road, and hopefully not interfere with too much riding time out there. So.